Hey everyone, today we're going to dive into a topic that's so important for all of us, understanding disability. Our goal here is to build a little more understanding, a little more respect, and figure out how we can all be better allies to the people in our communities.
So, let's just jump right in with a question I think a lot of us have probably asked ourselves at some point. You hear all these different terms, and honestly, it can be confusing. But getting the language right, that's the first step, and it's an absolutely crucial one for showing respect.
The thing is, language is always changing. Words like handicapped are pretty much out of date now. Today, the conversation is really centered around two main approaches. First, you've got person-first language, saying a person with a disability. The idea here is to put the person before the condition, right? But then there's also identity-first language, like saying a disabled person. A lot of people prefer this because they see their disability as a core part of who they are, not something separate. The biggest takeaway? Listen. Respect how someone refers to themselves. Both are way better than the old labels, because they center on the human being.
Okay, now to go a little deeper, we need to clear up something that often gets mixed up. There's a really big difference between a disability and a disorder, and once you get this, a lot of other things start to make more sense.
Here's the breakdown, side by side. On a basic level, a disability is seen as a permanent condition. It's not something that can be cured. A disorder, on the other hand, is generally thought of as a temporary disruption, and it's often treatable. Grasping this simple distinction, permanent versus temporary, is super helpful. So let's define that a bit more. A disability is a permanent condition that limits a person in their day-to-day activities. So, for example, I can pick up my phone without a second thought, but if someone is unable to do that same task, that limitation is what defines the disability. It can be something a person is born with or something that happens later in life.
And on the flip side, you have a disorder. This is usually a disruption in mental functioning. Think of conditions like depression or anxiety. The key difference here is that these are seen as treatable. With help from professionals like psychiatrists and therapists, people can manage these conditions and often overcome them.
Of course, disability isn't just one single thing. Not at all. It's a huge, wide spectrum. So to really get it, we need to break it down and look at a few of the major categories.
We're going to start with a category that's often called the invisible disability. And wow, that phrase is powerful, right? It's a perfect reminder that not all challenges are things you can see from the outside. We're talking about cognitive disabilities.
So what does that mean? Well, a cognitive disability is neurological. It has to do with how the brain processes, stores, and retrieves information. This can show up in a bunch of different ways, like memory disorders, hyperactivity that makes it tough to focus, or dyslexia, which affects reading and writing.
Next up, there's intellectual disability. Now, this is also rooted in the brain, but it's characterized by significant limitations in functions like reasoning things out, social judgment, and the practical everyday skills we learn from experience.
And finally, we have physical disability. This is probably what first comes to mind for a lot of people when they hear the word. It involves a limitation in a person's physical functioning. That could be their mobility, their stamina, or how their body works in general, like in cases of paralysis.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, but how do we actually put this all into practice? Let's get to what might be the most important part of all of this, how to interact with respect and be a genuine ally.
This is the real question, isn't it? It's not just about memorizing definitions. It's about our actions, our words, our attitude. So how do we take what we know and turn it into positive, everyday behavior?
It really boils down to these 4 simple but super powerful rules. 1. Speak with respect. Use that person-first or identity-first language we talked about. 2. Offer, don't assume. Just because someone has a disability doesn't mean they need your help. Ask first. Respect their independence. 3. Show genuine interest. Treat adults like adults. Avoid that voice of pity. And don't ask super personal questions about their condition. And 4. Just be aware. If you're meeting someone who's blind, say your name. And always be mindful of personal space, especially around things like a wheelchair, which is really an extension of that person's body. These things seem small, but they make a huge difference.
Finally, it's really important to know that there's often a whole ecosystem of support surrounding a person with a disability. Understanding this network helps us appreciate that it's a team effort.
And this chart gives you a great snapshot of that team. You've got counselors helping with career goals, physiotherapists working on movement and balance, occupational therapists helping with skills for daily living, like dressing or eating, speech therapists, special educators, the list goes on. Each one plays a critical role in empowering the individual. It's a true team effort.
So we've talked about the language, the distinctions, and some simple rules of respect. Now that we have this knowledge, the real question is, what are we going to do with it? So I'll leave you with this to think about. What's one small, simple step you can take, starting today, to make your corner of the world just a little bit more inclusive? Thanks for joining me.